Good morning.
Hi, Dan. Happy Friday.
I know, right?
It's
That's
supposed to
awesome.
be beautiful here today. I think up in the 70s?
Up in the, yeah, I think 76. I know what a
Woo!
difference a week makes. Last year we were freezing, or last
Last
week,
week
and
and
last
last
year.
year.
Yes.
We
Yes.
are on that dreaded anniversary. Oh man.
I know. Jeez.
I was like looking
It is funny
outside.
though, like, how can it be like, 20 and then it goes to 70? So,
It's
anyway,
true. And even last week, it got down to 17?
yeah, it was,
Ugh.
it was freezing. It was
Yeah.
freezing.
Too
Awesome.
cold.
Well, welcome everybody to the show today. We have an exciting guest who we'll bring on in a minute here. Crystal, do we have any announcements or anything coming up, or are we?
Hmm. The only thing I think we have office hours at the end of the month on the 28th,
Okay.
where if you are a license holder for our advanced licenses, or you want to learn more about upgrading from your essentials to advanced and what the benefits of that are, you can join us on the 28th at 11 a.m. or every fourth Monday for
Got
office
it.
hours. We will answer any question, whether it's like what you should do with your life or how to use, smiley face questions.
It really is
We
like open office hours, huh? I like it.
it's an open office hours. I mean, survey therapy at its best.
All right. Survey therapy. That's a new thing, maybe.
There you go. We can pull whatever life, question you have going on. Um and then something I know that's a little ways away, but I want to make sure we get it in people's minds is if you're going to be at IIEX in
Yes.
April in Austin, Dan and I would love to show you around and see you at the uh, conference or see you in real life outside of the conference in our hometown.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We're going to be at IIEX and we have a lot of exciting things planned, more to be named later, I suppose. But
I
if you're going to
know.
be there, reach out to us. Question Pro will definitely be at IIEX this year.
Yeah, but I think do you have a webinar or anything coming up?
No webinars. There's a few things coming up in a few months, but nothing really of note besides Live with Dan's. I mean, tune in every Friday.
Always tune in. Are you ready for the Super Bowl this weekend? And do not forget about Valentine's Day.
No, I know about Valentine's Day for sure, and I am ready for the Super Bowl for sure. Yeah,
I don't
I'm
even
ready.
think I know who's playing.
I'm rooting for the Bengals if it matters.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Are
I
you?
honestly thought it was going to like the 49ers and the Chiefs because I just assumed that's what was going to happen. And that's like the
Hmm.
complete opposite of that, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a complete opposite. It's a few other teams.
I'm going to a Super Bowl party on Sunday and I have to figure out what to cook, which I'm far more interested in than the game.
No, you might like the ads though.
I do. I love those.
See, I
But so
mean,
many of them come out early now.
I know they sneak them. It's like a sneak preview.
Right. So is it worth it? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. All right. Well,
Oh
let's
man.
let's keep the show rolling here and bring in our guest. All right, Selicia, how are you?
Doing well. Hi, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. So this is Selicia Sanchez-Adame. She runs Think Group here in Austin. Actually, she is a fellow Round Rock, I guess, citizen. I guess we can put it like that. I was going to say Round Rockian, but that didn't sound right to me in my head. So
We'll go with the fellow Round Rock.
there we go. I like that better. Awesome. Selicia, well, thanks so much for joining. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Think Group? I know you founded it in 2007. I'm kind
Yeah.
of interested to hear the reason behind founding it, but maybe we can get to that. But yeah, tell us a bit about you and your company.
Yeah. So we started out in 2007 and we were able to create a unique space. We're located right here off of 290 and 35. And so keeping our clients in mind, we wanted to be very convenient to the airport, right?
Well, that's a good point.
We all know our clients fly in and out to different markets. As soon as the next research study is done, they're off to another one. So when we headquartered here, we wanted to make sure we were thinking of that. So we have 4 focus group rooms with the one-way mirrors. And Think Group basically could assist in any recruiting project possible. So we do a lot of recruiting for our clients here locally as well as nationwide. And I know we're going to get to this here in a little bit, Dan, but even when you talk about online,
Hmm.
so we've seen like a huge spike in online, but believe it or not, we're seeing a lot more qual being done in person these days.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
that's exciting for us. So yeah.
No, that's great. And I know we chatted yesterday around some of the different things you're doing, and I still have that 2,500 person study in my head that you ran a year ago. So maybe that might be a good jumping off point here. Tell us a little bit more
Yeah.
about that.
And
I have
as
so many questions.
well, as you and Crystal were chatting about the weather, right? So
Yeah.
keep in mind, we launched this project last January. Okay. I got a call from our client and they were like, hey, we're ready to move forward. We're going to start next week. And I'm like, wait, what? We're starting next week? And he's like, yeah, we need 400 people to come in, in the next few weeks. And I'm like, okay. And we have like 4 days to recruit 16 people every single day for a full week, right? And then all of a sudden it just blew up and it's like, okay, we're doing 2,500. And I was like, okay, given a pandemic, we're going to do 2,500 in-person research study.
Wow.
Well, the interesting part of this, right, is that this particular study needed to use indoor and outdoor. So we had to build cubicles outside in our parking lot, again, in the middle of COVID, right? So our first date that we started, I think it was like the second week of January. So we launched it. We're running all these participants, different protocols are having to happen. They have to stay in their car. We have to call them when we're ready for them. Then we bring them in, etc.
Wow.
Everybody was like, we even built cubicles inside our office space to make sure they were even 6 feet apart, if you will, with one researcher. So we had like 6 researchers running studies nonstop.
Oh my gosh, those poor guys.
Wow.
It was literally like I blinked and I'm like, oh my gosh, we just ran so many participants today. Like, where did the time go? But then the weather hit.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's right. Geez.
Everything, like literally everything. And our clients are all over the world, right? So people are like, oh, the weather's not that bad in Austin. We still need to hit our numbers. And I'm like, we can't even drive, so
We don't have power, right? Like
our researchers that are from out of town, they're stuck in a hotel and they
Oh,
can't
wow.
go anywhere, right? And
Yeah.
so as you all know, and I learned this during the winter storm, is like food was scarce, etc., even in the hotel rooms. And I'm like, I
Yep.
can't even go and give my clients food or snacks, right? I can't even. So anyhow, that kind of like put a pause on things. But yeah, we ran 2,500 participants through our door.
Wow, that's amazing. In spite of a pandemic and the big freeze. So that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, can this be done? And I was like, hey, we are willing to try. And sure enough, everybody, everyone felt safe on the way that we set up the parameters for the study. So yeah.
That's amazing. So what were some of the things you had to do to shift to, making sure that you could accommodate people during the pandemic? I'm sure like the barriers and the plexiglass shields and all that, but I
Yeah.
mean, that had to be a big change for your business, right?
Yeah, no, we had to get creative just like everybody else had to do. And we got the plexiglass and we started that, in the beginning. But now, kind of given where we're at currently, we're doing a lot of in-person groups to where we're leaving the option open to our clients. So we're like, they said, what is your protocols? I'm like, you know what? It's whatever you all feel safe, right? We want to be mindful of the situation. So some of our clients are having us order the COVID test, right? The rapid test. So participants will come into our office 20 minutes prior to their scheduled time. We pay them an extra, $25 just so that they could come in, we get the results, make sure that it's a negative, right? And then they could go into the focus group room, remove their mask and feel comfortable in participating. Now, of course, if somebody does test positive, right, then they still get the full incentive and then they get removed from the in-person study. But keep in mind, I know some people are like, well, how do you kind of prevent that? Like, what if they show up sick? And rest assured, if any of you guys had COVID, I mean, sometimes it hits you pretty hard. So you're going to feel crappy. You're not going to come in and you're like, money coming in. Like, I
That's
love
a good point.
this product, but I am too sick to come in.
Right.
So we've had people though, the day before or the day of, and they're very mindful. They're like, hey, I'm not feeling well, or I got COVID, or I've been exposed, etc. So we appreciate that, and then we'll find a replacement.
Got it. So really leaving it up to what some of the client. the client's protocols. I'm sure even their companies have protocols for these things, right? So you're
Yes.
accommodating those. That's some of the best tips. That makes sense.
And some of the other things too, other clients have requested, because people are like, okay, well, I feel awkward asking people for verification for their vaccine card, right? But we've done that. It's okay. People are willing to share that. Again, it's all about making sure that the people that are participating and our research teams are comfortable in that fact. So
Right.
they're willing to be mindful.
So have you seen like your business, has it returned to pre-pandemic levels, or is it just changed? Like what, if
No,
you can share anything there, I'm just kind of curious around
it
that.
actually is. It's going back to some type of normalcy, right? We've
Right.
actually done a lot of mock trials, believe it or not. So where we've
Oh,
had
wow.
32 participants in our room, and we've done tons of them during the pandemic. So everybody knows, like, as any client would, right? Like if you hold back on research, you're gonna lose, right? Your
Yeah.
competitors are gonna surpass you. It has to be done. It's critical to our industry. So we're seeing a lot more people shift and say, okay, as long as we have X, Y, and Z in place, then we feel comfortable in doing in-person research.
Right. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then in terms of, do you know, is it like this like in other places, or is it just because we're in Texas? I'm kind of curious if like,
I also have a logistic question.
okay, yeah. We'll take your question after mine, okay, Crystal?
Okay.
And it is because we are in Texas, right? There's
Yeah.
other states that have more restrictions, and we respect that, but our clients at the end of the day, again, have to continue to do something. I mean, how do you go about doing a taste test, right? Can't
Yeah.
really do that necessarily online, right? You want to see what people are saying about your product when they're tasting it, and that's another type of methodology we've done a lot here locally. So
Right. That makes sense. Makes sense. Go ahead, Crystal.
Have you guys seen a benefit in doing these big studies with how Austin and the surrounding cities are growing?
Yes. So I feel a lot more, and we've all read it on, Austin Business Journal, if you will. So many more Fortune 500 companies are wanting to start their headquarters here, right?
Mhm.
And I could even speak to, I serve on the Round Rock Chamber Board of Commerce. And so we're seeing a lot more companies come into the Williamson County and Travis County
Yeah.
area to
Mhm.
establish it, right? I mean, it's a hot place to be. So people are excited to really understand the mindsets behind our communities, and it's an exciting time right now for everybody.
Has it helped with your recruiting numbers too for participants, just having literally a bigger pool of people?
Yeah, it is. But it's still always like a fascinating piece, right? I always love finding participants who have never done a study. Because
Mhm.
again, when you find those people, they're like, wait, it's too good to be true. You're gonna still sell me a timeshare or something.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I promise. And so again, it's about education. And I think what you guys are doing here is great, because it's a platform to educate people on what and how important our industry is, right?
Mhm.
So once we get to tell people about it, like, hey, no, our clients really do care about what you say, because at the end of the day, you're their customer or you're their non-customer. But even
Right.
then, how do you get them to be your customer? So once we educate somebody on that, then yes, Crystal, to your point, more people are coming in, they're telling their friends and families about it. They're wanting to get signed up because they like using the products or services that are being out there, but they also want to have a say in it if they can.
Yeah. That's crazy. I would love to pick your brain on like the craziest misconceptions when you're trying to recruit people.
Oh, we've done it all. We've literally done it all. And I'll share this, and Dan, you probably heard this before, and this will be something interesting for the audience. So we had one of the largest manufacturers come to us and say, hey, we need to talk to some people, and it was for a toilet.
Mhm.
So if you could imagine what people had to do, like, and again, don't get me wrong, it's not just people, and that's the other thing. People are like, oh, well, if you participate in the study, it's because you need the money. No, people are participating in the study because they care about the next Tesla car, right? They want to have a say. So it's all different social economic backgrounds. So when we were recruiting for this toilet project that was done in their house, we had to get all walks of life, different income brackets, different education brackets, just like all of our clients need to. But I won't get into all the details, but you could kind
Yeah.
of like put your creative mind on what has to happen. Because again, we
Right.
think we all know how to use the restroom. People use the restroom totally different. And
Yeah. That's interesting. Selicia, I'm thinking of some of the screener questions that you probably had to ask during that time. So
yeah,
interesting.
again, it's I love our industry. I mean, every day, like you all know, we walk in and it's something different, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's all about helping our clients really get the best feedback from their customers.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. And that's a good segue into, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about online focus groups, online IDIs, and so forth. I know you've done your fair share of those. What are like some of the key differences that you've seen? Obviously, I know one is in person, one's, as we're communicating now. So there's those differences, but maybe speak to that a little bit if you
Yeah,
can.
online, and a lot of people are like, okay, online's cheaper, right? That's how some companies think of it. Online's
Yeah.
cheaper, it's easier, we don't have to travel, etc.
Right.
Depending on the type of platform you're using for your online, it could be literally the same amount, right?
Hmm.
The cost, if you think about it that way. The only difference that you're really saving by being online is maybe like your lodging, right? You're not having to fly out as many clients to view this stuff.
Right.
So that's kind of one thing to keep in mind. But when we're recruiting for online, I always tell clients, I was like, really think long and hard about the purpose of your research, right? Is it really worth it to do it online, or is it really best to do it in person? Online, there's a lot of different ways you could get distracted, right? And I
Mhm.
think Dan, you and I spoke about this yesterday. It's like some people, their kid might be home from school or they're doing homeschool. So you can't stop your child from knocking on your door, banging on the door like, hey, I need food,
Yep.
I need a
That's
snack,
true. Yep.
right? Or think about your pets, right? You might have a pet that's barking loud and you didn't get a chance to take them out.
Mhm.
Or let's also keep in mind that some participants, no matter how often we tell them, please be in a quiet place, please be in a well-lit place, right? When you're conducting the interview with the researcher, some people are sitting in a recliner. Like,
Right.
okay, so think if I'm like rocking back and forth, and then you have a group of people online, like how
Start to get seasick, right? Like,
and we literally had to like be mindful and tell the participant like, hey, like, can you please like either stop, rocking back and forth, or if you don't mind, try to find another seating arrangement and then come back on, right? So
right.
those are things you don't really think about. Again, lighting, right? I'm sure we've all been on a conference call before and someone in the screen, they're lighting, you can't really see them, and then they move away from the camera and they're like, oh, I can see them, and then they move back in and it's like, okay, they're
Yep.
dark,
Yep.
right? So those are things and options that participants or clients sometimes don't think of.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's very engaging when you are in person. So
Right.
I know sometimes people ask me all the time, like, well, do you see in-person research going away? And I was like, no, absolutely not. And if people don't do in-person research, your competitor is, and it's going to maybe surpass your products or services that you're offering, because there's
Mhm.
not a better way to like understand in a group full of people the excitement, right? Or the
Right.
hate or love for something that they're seeing for the first time.
Interesting.
No, that makes sense. And 100%, I think in person is awesome. For those maybe that can't do that, like, what are other benefits to online? Obviously, it can be more dispersed, right? You don't need one area and so forth. But if I'm used to doing in-person groups, like, what are some of the things I can need to keep in mind that would help me
So
out?
yeah, so whenever someone's doing online, I always say, please make sure to do tech checks, right? Like
Yep.
Mhm.
that's absolute must to do a tech check with participants in advance, because you want to make sure their video and audio work, etc. The other thing too is like you have to just be mindful of the situation, because we've had participants when we're doing online research, the power goes out in
Yeah.
that city that they're in because of winter storm, right?
Right.
Can't do anything about it. They can't log back in. And unfortunately, now you don't have that individual representation, if you will, from that
Mm.
specific state. But I definitely think, utilize online research if you can, but just be mindful of unknown circumstances that are going to come your way. And you can't really be frustrated. I think in today's society, like we just have to be more accommodating, right? We have to just
Right.
understand we're
Yeah.
humans. We got to figure it out and then go from there.
Do you think the session should be shorter? Like, instead of doing like an hour, like maybe cap it at like 30 minutes? Or what's your
Yeah.
experience there?
I'd say an hour is fine. We've done it 90 minutes. If you can, I'd say don't go more than 90 minutes, because then you really lose that person in a sense, because they're antsy, right? They're sitting,
Yeah.
not that you're not sitting in a chair in person, right? Whenever you're doing it at a facility,
Mhm.
but I mean, you're just literally behind a screen looking at the camera and your
Mhm.
eyes, and you get antsy. So if you can, highly recommend to keep it shorter than 90 minutes.
Interesting. Interesting. Crystal, you had a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, have you, when we talk about online research, I'm assuming you're using Zoom or some sort of platform, but is there any, like, this is going to be such like a millennial thing I'm going to say right now. Have you been using like TikTok or like Instagram video or, like Snapchat communities, like, because those are such like a target for just a different demo? Is there a way to, like, that you're using different platforms? And when we talk about online, I just think Zoom.
Right. And you're absolutely right, Crystal, because again, kind of going back to who's your target audience, you have to be mindful of what platform you're utilizing. I will say majority of people are utilizing the Zooms, the other software companies that are out there, right, for specifically our industry.
Mhm.
But it is, if you're going for the younger crowd, I'd consider that, right? But you have to keep in mind, some people, it's like an education thing for the client side too. It's like you have to educate yourself on how to use those platforms. And so as long as that client can understand how to use those platforms, then I would definitely say go for it. I know a lot of clients too are using WhatsApp a lot
Mhm. Yep.
for their research, which makes sense. But to go to the TikTok, the Instagrams, we have clients that are using that. It's more for like one-on-ones, or they want to know what is it like in your life,
Hmm.
while you're out and about, send me a video of X, Y, and Z of you doing it. And
Right.
that's been
Right.
very successful to target the younger audience.
That's
Cool.
interesting. I know I've heard some good case studies around like recruiting from TikTok and those channels, right, to get sort of the younger audience. So it's kind of interesting. You wouldn't find me on there, but I don't think I'm a good
Never say
film.
never, Dan.
Oh, I never say never. I'm just saying right now,
Yeah,
like,
never say never again.
yeah, I got some dance moves to show, I think. What do you think, Selicia, the sort of the future of qual looks like? And I can take this any way that you want. I know it's a broad question, but do you think it's like still a mix of in person and online, or do you think there's some innovation in person that we can do? What's sort
I
of your outlook for the next, let's say, 5 years in the qual space?
I think, it's a mixture.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say, I think everything is still on the table, nothing should be taken off, but I think more things need to be added to the table, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have to get out of that creative box, right? When going to school, we all know, we've heard, think outside the box.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's literally what we're having to do in our industry. So I love the fact of when a client wants to come and they're like, okay, I want to do this out of the box methodology. Can it be done? Absolutely. And I'll kind of share one with you.
Yeah.
Um, Again, thinking about, have you ever wanted to know, how do people travel, right? How do they go in the airport and catch a flight? Well, maybe it's something, if you're a travel agency, you might need to go on a flight with somebody, right? You
Mm-hmm.
might not need to understand just an online conversation. Maybe you actually need to catch the flight with the participant and understand how they're doing
I
their
want to be a part of this study. I volunteer.
well, but this is what I'm saying. Like, I'm just throwing this out there. We haven't done one yet, but that's the first one that came to my mind. It's like, if you're a flight company,
Mm-hmm.
how do you really understand that process, right? Like
Yep.
the barriers. I mean, you could talk about it, but what better way if you're actually on the flight doing it with the participant? Same thing with, all of the foods that we eat, right? I mean, how are people cooking? Have you ever, we do shop alongs, right? That's kind of coming back, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just really thinking outside the box on the different methodologies that's going to make your project most successful. So I think we're not done. I think we're going to see tons of different opportunities to conduct research. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's exciting. And more importantly, the recruiting companies out there across globally, we just have to be ready to say, hey, we're not scared. We're ready to jump in with you and figure this out.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And I like some of the different technologies and integrating that, like with the shop alongs, maybe it's not a person, but they have their phone and live streaming. Like there's a lot of things you can do there that technology enables. So I think
Mhm.
that's a really good point. Awesome. Well, hey, Selicia, thanks for joining. I don't know, Crystal, do you have any other
I have
questions?
so many more questions. I was like,
Okay.
what about the Amazon store? How do they do research? Stalking people, like watching people. I just have like so many thoughts and questions. I'm not from research. So
Okay.
that's why
Well,
I'm
no,
like,
we
this
can
is
we can chat more offline. I always say I want to write a book one day, just all the different things that we get to
Yeah.
experience in our industry, right? And that's what makes it so exciting to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And also too, I will say Think Group will be at IIEX as well. So definitely come and check us out. And
Yeah.
maybe at that point, Crystal and anyone else who's coming and flying out of town, or even if you're local, reach out to Dan or Crystal or I, and we'd love to give you a tour of Austin, show you around. It's a lot of excitement in our own backyard.
Absolutely. No, that'd be exciting. Looking forward to that for sure. Well, Selicia, thanks so much for joining. It was a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you for having me. Everyone have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was so fun.
You learned something new, right?
Dude, I learned something new every live with Dan,
I know.
but that one, because I will say I, as in like a digital native first, like that was one of my biggest questions when I started at Question Pro was why do we do so much in-person stuff when the digital world is so available to us? And she articulated that so well, just like the value of that. And I think that it's easy to be like, oh, well, going virtual, we'll save money, we'll do this. And it's all these assumed value adds
Mm-hmm.
where it's actually might be hurting you in the long run.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. All these different things they needed to take into consideration. So when she told me about the 2,500 person study and during the pandemic, and then I didn't even
And
think
then
about
the winter
the
storm.
freeze, like, man, how many punches can you take? But they got through it. So that's awesome.
That's just crazy. That's just crazy.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we can wrap up the show today. Crystal, thanks for joining me. Thanks everyone for viewing, and we'll be back next week.
Okay. Bye, Dan.
Bye.